45 Strange Ways Your Subconscious Controls You. Carl Jung's Hidden Truth. Carl Jung discovered something unsettling about human consciousness. The part of your mind you're aware of, the thoughts you think consciously, the decisions you believe you're making. These represent only a tiny fraction of what's actually happening in your psyche. Beneath your conscious awareness lies something vast, something powerful, something that controls far more of your behavior than you realize. Jung called it the unconscious, and he spent his life mapping the strange and often disturbing ways it operates. The unconscious isn't just a storage place for forgotten memories. It's an active force, making decisions, directing behavior, creating emotions, shaping perceptions, all without your conscious awareness or permission. Understanding Jung's insights about unconscious control isn't just intellectually interesting. It's essential for anyone who wants to understand why they do what they do, why they feel what they feel, why they keep repeating patterns they consciously want to change. These 45 ways your subconscious controls you reveal Jung's hidden truth. You are not the master of your own mind, at least not yet. Not until you understand what's operating beneath the surface. Ways the unconscious controls perception. 1. You see what you expect to see. Your unconscious filters reality through your expectations, making you literally blind to things that don't match your beliefs. 2. You notice what you're afraid of. Fear programs your attention, making threats seem more common than they are. 3. You attract what you focus on, not mystically, but because your unconscious directs your attention and behavior toward whatever occupies it. 4. You project your shadow onto others, seeing your own rejected traits in everyone around you. 5. You idealize what you can't have. Your unconscious inflates the value of whatever is unavailable or forbidden. 6. You overlook the obvious. Sometimes the most important things are invisible because they're too close or too familiar. 7. You create meaning where there is none. Your brain hates randomness, so it invents patterns and significance even in random events. 8. You remember selectively. Your unconscious edits your memories to match your current identity and beliefs. 9. You see confirmation everywhere. Once you believe something, your unconscious finds evidence for it constantly. 10. You miss your own patterns. The patterns that control your life are often invisible to you, visible to everyone else. Ways the unconscious controls emotions. 11. You feel before you think. Emotions arise from the unconscious before conscious thought can process what's happening. 12. You react to symbols unconsciously. Certain images, words, or situations trigger emotional responses you can't explain. 13. You carry emotional wounds you don't remember. Childhood experiences shape your emotional responses without conscious memory of the original events. 14. You transfer feelings from past relationships. Your unconscious treats new people as if they're old ones, creating inappropriate emotional reactions. 15. You feel attracted without knowing why. Attraction often reflects unconscious psychological needs rather than conscious preferences. 16. You develop inexplicable aversions. Strong dislikes often indicate projected shadow content. 17. You experience mood shifts you can't explain. Autonomous complexes taking over consciousness temporarily. 18. You feel emotions that aren't yours, picking up emotional content from the collective unconscious. 19. You cry at strange moments, when unconscious material breaks through unexpectedly. 20. You feel nostalgia for things you never experienced. Archetypal memories from the collective unconscious. Ways the unconscious controls behavior. 21. You repeat patterns you consciously want to stop. Unconscious programming overrides conscious intentions. 22. Use self-sabotage at crucial moments. Shadow content undermining conscious goals. 23. You procrastinate on specific things. Unconscious resistance to what those tasks represent. 24. You make Freudian slips. The unconscious revealing itself through mistakes. 25. You have compulsive habits you can't explain. Behaviors serving unconscious psychological needs. 26. You choose partners who recreate childhood dynamics. Unconsciously seeking to resolve old wounds through new relationships. 27. You avoid what you most need. Defense mechanisms protecting you from psychological growth. 28. You seek situations that hurt you. Repetition compulsion, trying to master old traumas. 29. You act out of character under stress. Autonomous complexes taking control. 30. You mirror others unconsciously, adopting their mannerisms, speech patterns, even beliefs without awareness. Ways the unconscious controls decisions. 31. You decide emotionally, then rationalize logically. Most decisions come from the unconscious first. Conscious mind creates justifications after. 32. You're influenced by things you don't notice. Subliminal cues affecting choices without awareness. 33. You choose what feels familiar over what's better. Unconscious preference for the known, even when it's harmful. 34. You avoid decisions that threaten your identity, even when those decisions would improve your life. 35. You're manipulated by your own biases. Unconscious biases controlling choices you think are rational. 36. You follow group norms without questioning. Collective unconscious influencing individual decisions. 37. You make snap judgments you can't justify. Inconscient processing producing instant conclusion. 38. You change your mind without knowing why. Unconscious material shifting perspectives suddenly. 39. You choose based on mood, not logic. Current emotional state determining major life decisions. 40. You're swayed by irrelevant factors. Context, timing, or arbitrary elements affecting important choices. Ways the unconscious controls relationships. 41. You're attracted to your opposite, seeking shadow integration through romantic partners. 42. You repeat relationship patterns. Same problems with different people because of unconscious programming. 43. You project parental figures onto partners, treating romantic partners like your mother or father unconsciously. 44. You test people without meaning to, unconsciously recreating childhood situations to see if they'll repeat. 45. You push away what you want most. Fear of intimacy or success causing unconscious sabotage. Understanding unconscious control, Jung's framework. Jung didn't just catalog these ways the unconscious operates. He understood the structure and purpose behind them. Understanding this framework helps you work with your unconscious rather than being controlled by it. The personal unconscious. The personal unconscious contains your individual forgotten memories, suppressed emotions, rejected traits, everything you've experienced but pushed out of awareness. This material doesn't disappear. It forms autonomous complexes, clusters of emotionally charged content that can take over consciousness temporarily. When you lose it or don't know what came over you, that's a complex controlling your behavior. Signs a complex is active. Your emotional reaction is disproportionate to the trigger. You feel like you're not yourself. You can't control your response even when you want to. You repeat the same pattern despite conscious efforts to stop. You feel possessed by an emotion or behavior. The collective unconscious. Beyond personal unconscious lies the collective unconscious. The inherited psychological structures all humans share. Jung called these structures archetypes. Archetypes are like psychological instincts, universal patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior. They operate automatically, below consciousness, shaping how you perceive reality and respond to situations. Common archetypal influences. The mother archetype affecting how you relate to nurturing and being nurtured. The father archetype shaping your relationship with authority and structure. The shadow archetype controlling what you reject in yourself and see in others. The anima or animus affecting your relationships with the opposite sex. The self archetype pulling you toward wholeness and integration. The compensation function. Jung discovered that the unconscious often compensates for conscious attitudes. If your conscious mind is too one-sided, the unconscious produces opposite content to create balance. This explains many seemingly irrational behaviors. The overly rational person having emotional outbursts. The morally rigid person having forbidden desires. The independent person suddenly becoming clingy. The unconscious is trying to restore balance. But because we don't understand this, we fight against it instead of integrating what it's offering. Why the unconscious acts this way. Understanding why the unconscious operates this way helps you work with it rather than against it. Protection mechanism. Many unconscious behaviors are protective. They develop to shield you from overwhelming experiences. Painful emotions, threats to your identity. The problem is that protections that worked in childhood often become limitations in adulthood. But the unconscious doesn't know that. It keeps running old programs designed for old situations. Common unconscious protections. Repression of traumatic memories to prevent overwhelm. Projection of unacceptable traits to maintain self-image. Avoidance of situations that feel similar to past trauma. Compulsive behaviors to manage anxiety. Relationship patterns to avoid vulnerability. Integration drive. Jung believed the psyche naturally moves toward wholeness. What he called individuation. The unconscious produces dreams, symptoms, and behaviors designed to push you toward integrating rejected aspects of yourself. What seems like self-sabotage might be the unconscious preventing you from pursuing goals that don't align with your authentic self. What seems like irrational behavior might be unconscious wisdom trying to redirect you. Energy management. The unconscious manages psychic energy automatically, directing attention, creating motivation, producing fatigue, all based on what it determines is important. When you can't focus on something you think you should care about, that's unconscious energy management telling you it's not actually aligned with your deeper needs or values. Working with your unconscious. Jung's goal wasn't just understanding the unconscious. It was learning to work with it consciously, to make the unconscious conscious, and in doing so, gain freedom from automatic patterns. Active imagination. Jung developed a technique called active imagination, deliberately engaging with unconscious content through dialogue, visualization, or creative expression. This allows you to communicate with autonomous complexes, understand their needs, and integrate their energy consciously. Active imagination practice. Identify an emotion, impulse, or pattern you don't understand. Give a form, a voice, a personality. Engage in dialogue with it. Ask what it wants, why it's there. Listen without judgment. The unconscious speaks in symbols and feelings. Look for the legitimate need beneath the problematic behavior. Dream work. Dreams are the unconscious communicating. Every night, your unconscious produces content designed to balance your conscious attitude, reveal blind spots, and guide development. Most people ignore dreams or forget them immediately. But learning to work with dreams is like getting messages from the wisest part of yourself. Basic dream work. Record dreams immediately upon waking. Notice recurring themes, symbols, emotions. Ask what each element might represent about your current life. Look for what's being compensated or balanced. Pay attention to how dreams make you feel. Shadow integration. The shadow, your rejected and suppressed traits, controls much of your behavior through projection, compulsion, and sabotage. Integrating shadow content means acknowledging these rejected parts, understanding them, and finding conscious ways to express legitimate needs they represent. Shadow work practice. Notice what you strongly dislike in others. That's often shadow. Acknowledge that these traits exist in you too, even in different form. Understand the legitimate need the shadow trait represents. Find healthy ways to express that need consciously. Withdraw projections by owning your shadow. Symptom reading. Jung viewed psychological symptoms not as problems to eliminate, but as messages from the unconscious that something needs attention. Depression might be the unconscious forcing a pause for necessary reflection. Anxiety might be highlighting genuine threats you're ignoring. Compulsions might be meeting needs you're not acknowledging. Reading your symptoms. Ask what need this symptom might be serving. Consider what would happen if you didn't have this symptom. Look for what in your life is out of balance. Examine what you might be avoiding or denying. See symptoms as communication rather than problems. The liberation of consciousness. Jung's hidden truth about unconscious control is initially disturbing. Learning that you're not as in control as you thought. That unconscious forces direct much of your life. This can feel unsettling or even threatening. But this knowledge is ultimately liberating. Because what's unconscious controls you. What becomes conscious can be chosen, can be worked with, can be integrated, from automaticity to choice. When you don't understand unconscious influences, you're a puppet to invisible forces. Your behavior feels automatic, inevitable, beyond your control. But when you make the unconscious conscious, when you understand what's driving your patterns, suddenly you have choice. The automatic becomes optional. The inevitable becomes changeable. From fragmentation to wholeness. Unconscious control keeps you fragmented. Part of you wants one thing while another part sabotages it. You're at war with yourself without understanding why. Integration brings wholeness. When you understand and work with unconscious content, the civil war ends. Your various parts begin working together, moving in the same direction, from reaction to creation. An unconscious life is reactive. You respond to triggers, repeat patterns, react to circumstances, living on autopilot determined by forces you don't understand. A conscious life is creative. You choose responses, change patterns, create circumstances, living deliberately according to values you've consciously chosen. The ongoing process. Making the unconscious conscious isn't a one-time achievement. It's an ongoing process. Jung called it individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming who you truly are. New unconscious material constantly emerges. New complexes form. New shadow content develops. New archetypal themes activate. The work is never done. But each piece of unconscious content you integrate increases your freedom, your authenticity, your power to choose your life rather than being driven by invisible forces. Conclusion: Jung's hidden gift. Jung's research into unconscious control seems like bad news at first. Learning that you're controlled by forces you can't see, can't understand, can barely influence. But this knowledge is actually a gift, because ignorance of unconscious control doesn't protect you from it. It just keeps you enslaved to it. The person who doesn't understand these 45 ways the unconscious controls them is completely at their mercy. Repeating patterns, acting out complexes, living according to unconscious programming from childhood, never understanding why. But the person who understands unconscious operation gains something precious: the ability to work with their unconscious rather than against it, to make conscious what was unconscious, to integrate what was rejected, to choose what was automatic. This is Jung's hidden truth and his hidden gift. You are controlled by your unconscious, but you don't have to remain controlled. Through understanding, through inner work, through making the unconscious conscious, you can become free. Not free from the unconscious. That's impossible, but free to work with it consciously, to integrate its wisdom, to use its energy, to become whole rather than fragmented, conscious rather than automatic, self-determined rather than driven by invisible forces. The journey from unconscious control to conscious integration is difficult. It requires honesty, courage, sustained effort, but it's the only path to genuine freedom, authentic living, and becoming who you truly are rather than who unconscious programming has made you. Your unconscious is operating right now, directing your attention, creating your emotions, shaping your perceptions, controlling your behaviors. The only question is whether you'll remain ignorant of it, or whether you'll begin the difficult but liberating work of making it conscious. Jung showed us the way. The rest is up to you.